So today we'll be discussing about bit manipulation. Now, before we start with like the actual problems and all, before that you should know the operators and some things that you can use to like speed up your coding in bit manipulation. So these are the prime six operators that people use. Apart from this, there is not. Okay, so not is also like a logical operator, but you can say it works like a bit operator for zeros and ones, for zero and one. So you should understand what these things mean. So how many of you know all six of them? Can I have a plus one on them? Like can predict the output of any input given to this. Okay. So anyone having any specific doubt? I think these three should be clear to all. This is or. Let me quickly iterate on this. Okay, tilde. I expected that. Tilde is not very common. So and or zor is like the standard and or zor. So I'm not iterating on these. So I think this is covered in every, like I think all of college students knows what and or zor is. So let's cover this exactly once. A shifted by B and tilde A. Okay. So this means this is equivalent to the number A multiplied by 2 to the power B. Okay. This is equivalent to this particular number, and tilde A is actually flipping the bits in all the positions. Okay. So let me ask this: what would be the value of tilde 3? Can someone give in the chat? Like, what will be the output if I give A equal to 3 in this particular problem? Okay. Apparently, it's not like that. It's not. Yeah, it will be 2's complement. True. Yeah. So since it's int, it will take 32 bits, right? Like it's fixed. Okay, that's still not correct. So there is a concept of signed and unsigned bits, right? So 2 to the, so since it's signed, this will not work like that. Like it will not be 2 to the power 32. So this will give you something like a lot of ones and then zeros, right? But this will be in 2's complement form because this is 1. So we will have to like take its complement, that is 1 1 0 0 0, and add 1 to it. Okay, so like this is in 2's complement form since this bit is 1. So we convert it into the number that it corresponds to, we take flips and add 1. So this gives us 4. So this is negative, this 1 means negative, and this is 4. So if you check, like tilde of 3 will be equal to 4. Okay, so sorry, minus 4. Is it clear to all? So it will be in bit representation, this particular value. But now if I see out this basically gives a signed equivalent in 10 base. So it takes out this particular bit and it sees it's 1. So it's a negative number. For negative, we know that the rest of the thing represents the number in a 2's complement. So we convert it back using this logic that, okay, we flip it back and then add 1. Okay, so this is conversion of numbers from like normal numbers to like binary numbers in negative form to 2's complement forms. Like this is very standard 2 complement form. You can read about it if you want to. Okay. But the rule is simply flip and add 1. Okay, that's all. So this will give you the magnitude of the number, and since it's 1, this will be negative. Everyone clear on this? So you can use this if you want to. This is not very frequently used, but still you should know. If you read a code, you should know what tilde does. Okay. Now let's talk about few operators that are not like I think is not very common. Let's remove this. I'm not printing numbers. I think all of you get the idea of things. So and also you can read about them. I think there is no fancy thing about that. It's pretty simple. Like take zeros, 0 and 0 zeros, these things. So you can take the output of these things, and all of these operations happen bitwise, right? So whatever operator we wrote, it happens for every bit, like parallel. Like it's not like it, all the bits are independent, to be precise. Okay, so it never interacts with, like the interaction never changes between the bits if you are computing those operators. So now let's talk about these operations that are like, these are not given by header files. These are actually provided by the compiler. So earlier it was only provided by GCC, but now I think even CLang provides this particular these particular operations. So now you can use them if you want to write codes faster, to be precise. Like, so how many of these you know about? Can we will anyways run this one. So let's run this and quickly understand what the output is giving. So let's run it to 3. Okay, 3 does not make sense. Let's run it to 5. Okay. So let's understand what this particular function means. Now, first of all, it's this built-in CLZ, right? Pop count gives the number of set bit, right? Okay, correct. So let's start from the first one itself. We will come to pop count. So this CLZ actually gives you the this actually means count leading zeros. Okay, so if there is some number in 32 base, like there are a lot of zeros, and then like after some number of zeros there is, like, let's suppose for 5 it's 101, right? So in total this is 32, this is 3, so number of leading zeros is equal to 29, right? This is 29. So that's what this particular function gives you. Count the number of leading zeros in a binary number. Okay, now similarly, this is leading zeros, this is trailing zeros. Okay, so find the number of zeros after the last one, these many zeros. So since in 5 there are no zeros at the end, this gives us 0. Let's quickly run on a one more uh, input. Let's say let's take 12. Okay, so 12 is 4 bit, so 28 bits are 0 in the front. There are, like, 12 is 1100, so there are 2 zeros at the end. Okay, and built-in pop counts give you the number of, to say, just a minute, the number of ones in the representation. Okay, just a minute. Is it clear? Like, I think pop count is still popular, but the other two is not frequently used, but you can use them to get logs and other things, very like log base 2 very fast. Okay, so you can find these values using, like, looping on the numbers on each of the individual bits. However, when you are, like, coding, you might use these, like, built-in functions to code faster, right? So you should know these things. All of the three clear? I think, like, these are just definitions. Count leading zeros, count trailing zeros, and pop count is number of 1. Now note that I'm using integer, and hence I'm, like, writing pop count. In case you are using long, okay, so let's suppose if you're trying to print long this, long a, and if I take, like, let's suppose 3. So for this particular for Clang it works, but ideally you should use this function form count ll. Okay, so pop count ll is actually for long. Okay, so a lot of functions has, like, their ll variation as well, so you should know these things. Like, there is a function called s2i which converts a string to integer. Okay, so for that as well, if you're converting into a long, you should use s2ll. So these are there in syntax of C++. So you should know which functions have their ll version separate. So similarly for built-in pop count, if you want to find ones, if you're having a number bigger than 10 to about, like, 2 to the power 32, then you should ideally use a pop count ll. Okay, however, it's still a lot of compiler dependent. Some compilers support even pop counts with 32 bits. Okay, now let's talk about one more thing. Let's suppose I ask you, let's say, find the number equivalent to, so I want a variable which contains the binary, like, which contains the number 110101, something like this. Okay, I give you this binary number. Now if I ask you to print a variable which prints this in base 10, so this is a fixed number, you will get this number, and you need to just print it in number. You need to know the tens base number for this. So to do this fast in C++, what you can use is something like, if you want to declare variables which are in binary form, you can use something like auto number equal to 0b this. Okay, so this actually loads the variable into loads this variable with this binary number after it. Okay, so you can use this very frequently if you want to, like, keep numbers in variables. Like, there are some particular numbers that are used frequently in some problems. You can keep them in variables if you want to by this kind of declarations. Okay. So this is one thing. Now, Yeah, it adds leading zero. So this adds leading zero. So it takes it into int and it will add leading zero. So this part will be the number that will be there. So you can try it out with a lot of numbers and see the pattern. So like one of the most frequent binary operation that you would be using is testing whether the ith bit is on or not. So the best way to do this is this. So find out if the number ends binary forms ith bit is 1 or not. Okay. So if you want to code this particular logic, then you can use this particular if, or you can also write it in this form. Okay. So what this means is you just remove the last I bits. Okay. So how this works is, let's suppose you have 1100 and you want to find the second bit, like this what is the bit at this position, is it 1 or not? So what you do is shift it by 2 positions. So this will be n shifted by 2. So by shifting we mean that we remove the last 2 bits of the number. That's what shifting does. Okay. So it will become 1 1 and then it will take AND with 1. So this part will get ANDed with this and it will remain 1, and since this is positive, this will return true. Okay. This again is like you have 1 and you shift it by 2 positions, so this 1 will become 100, and if you take this AND with this particular number, it is still 100, right? And this is positive, so this will return true as well. Okay. Now it's sometimes better to use these things like the first one rather than the second one. Reason being that if you're having n in a long variable, no, this will not change. So this is like an operator, right? So this will return a number in place. So this will not change the n in place. So you have a syntax something like this as well, that n shifted equal to by 3. So this will do it in place, just like plus equals to, right? So you have shift equals to as well. So in that case, it will like happen in place. Okay. But this does not change the number. This is just like it will return a number. Like what if I wrote this? Will this change the number? No, right? So this will not change as well. Okay. So ideally you should be using the first one. Reason being, like we sometimes use second one as well, but the reason is there is a possibility of mistake over here, because this part, this one LL, this one shifted by I part, if I put I equal to 34, this will overflow because it takes the data type of this particular number. Okay. So when you are using problems where the numbers are in long form, if you write this it will, and you want to test for the ith bit in a long number, this will become wrong because this can only go up to 32. So ideally you should be writing it like this, but you might forget this and write the code and you might get wrong answers. So you can prefer to use the first format. Okay. Or else if you are careful, you can write 1L shifted by I always. So that will always go up to the range of a long. Okay. So whenever you are using the shift operators in a long number, make sure that you are using 1LL shifted by I and not just 1L. That's a very like common mistake that people make and like get wrong answers for that. Okay. So now there is one more thing. Let's say I want a number to contain. So let's suppose this is the number. Okay. I want to remove the last 1 bit from the number. I want to convert it to this. How do I do this particular thing? Any ideas? This is a positive number and we want to remove its last 1 from the number. Not XOR. So we don't know where it is, right? The thing is we don't know where it is. So one way would be to like iterate and find the ith, like the first one from the end. So when we are writing numbers, let's set up a convention. Okay. So this is called LSB and this is called MSB. So this is most significant bit. This is the least significant bit, right? Yeah. So there is this syntax A and A minus 1. Okay. So you should know about this. Let's talk about this particular number itself. Let's say if this is say a variable A. Okay. Let's say this is the variable A. then what is a minus 1? This will be equal to 1 1 0 0 1 1, right? So this is not there. Okay, this is not there. Okay, so this is the a minus 1, and then if you take and between these two, you get 1 0 and 0. This will become 0 0 0 0 1 1, right? So this is what we required. So what is happening is after the 1 everything becomes 1, but they are already 0 in the original number, so they anyways get cancelled out, and the last one will get removed. So whenever you need to remove last one from the binary, you just use this particular idea, that a and a minus 1 or n and n minus 1 to remove it. Okay, and if you want to count the number of ones in a, so if you want to implement pop count, okay, that we discussed, pop count yourself, so instead of doing it in order, let's say number of bits, you can do it in order number of ones in the number. Okay, so you can repeatedly do this. So once you do this, you know that you counted 1 1 in the number, right? One set bit in the number. You keep doing this until you get a 0, and that many ones were there in the number, right? This can be used to implement a pop counter, which is efficient than like counting through the bits. Actually, the internal pop count is like quite fast, so you can rely on that. But if you're implementing it on your own, you can use this logic. Is everyone clear with everything that we discussed till now? Can I have a plus 1 in the chat? Okay. So we have been discussing a lot of syntactic details till now. Let's quickly move to, let's say, 1 or 2 problems so that you understand what you can do with bits. So let's talk about this particular problem. Let's say you're given a number n, okay, and you have to find the XOR of, find this particular number, 1 XOR 2 XOR 3 XOR n. Okay, so given a number n, you have to find the value of like cumulative XOR from 1 to n, and n can be up to 10 to the power, let's say 18. So you obviously cannot loop through it. So how do we do this particular operation? Anyone having any idea? Okay. Vijay is correct, I think. Yeah, odd number of set bits. Okay. Yeah. So over here, this is a problem that you need to know, rather than, I think it's very difficult to find it directly on your own. So let's try to write few values. Okay. Let's fill these values. So for 1 it will be 1. For 2 it will be 1 XOR 2. So that will be 3. Then 3 XOR 3 will be equal to 0. Then 0 XOR 4 will be 4. For 4 XOR 5, this will be equal to 1. For 1 XOR 6, this will be equal to 7. For 7 XOR 7, 0, and then it's 8, right? So this is the pattern. So what happens is, in this particular format, a pattern repeats with a size 4 in this particular sequence. Okay, so you can see that this is always 1. Over here as well, it's 1, right? Over here, if this is n, this is n plus 1. Okay, this is always 0. This is also, like, if this is 6, this is 7, right? So this is n plus 1 always. Okay, this is always 0. Okay, and this is always n. Yeah, so if you had to do this particular problem on your own, you could use, like, you can like think about each bit and see how many times 1 was coming in this. That's a very good idea. And like, if you had to solve this problem on your own, that's what you should be doing. But this is one trick that you should know in XORs, that this holds. Okay, that, okay, there is this nice property of repetition after 4 numbers, and after every 4 number, this gets like this pattern. So now, given any large number 10 to the power 18, this will behave similar to the number which is like equal to, let's say, if you're given a number x, this will behave similar to x minus 1 mod 4 plus 1. Okay, whatever the property followed by that over here was, same property will be followed by that number in the large number as well. Okay. So with that, you can get the value from 1 to n. And now let's suppose I have to find the value from, let's suppose I give you L to R and find the value of L XOR L plus 1. Yeah, I'm going to explain this once again. Let's just submit this. Okay. So for this, let's quickly understand how we are coming up to this. So we talked about an observation over here that for this there is a cycle of pattern occurring after every 4 numbers. So the first answer is always 1. The second answer is whatever the n is, it's n plus 1. The next number is 0. The next number is n. So this cycle of 4 will keep on repeating. Okay? So given any large number x, if you want to find out which of these 4 pattern numbers will it follow, so you can shift it by 4, like keep shifting it downwards by 4 using this particular expression, right? So let's say you had to find out equivalent for 7. So 7 minus 6, 7 minus 1 will be equal to 6, mod 4 will be equal to 3, will be equal to 2, plus 1 will be equal to 3. So 7 will behave similar to 3. And for 3, we know the logic is n plus 1. So for 7 also it will be n plus 1. Sorry, I meant to say. So for 3, this was 0. So for 7 also this will be 0. Like this property will follow over there as well. So with this particular shifting logic of modulo, you can convert it to any bigger number into its corresponding answer using this pattern. Okay. And to prove this, you can use induction. Okay. If you had to like solve it on place, how can we find the value? Yeah, so for finding value itself, I'm saying, right, this is if the value is x, so its answer will be converted to this form. Whatever pattern is followed, like if this is n, this will be n, then for x also this will be x. If for this number this was n plus 1, for this it will be x plus 1. Or else for this it will be 0, for this it will be 1. There are only 4 possible numbers. Okay. Yeah, so this is one way to solve this particular problem. This is the only problem that we'll be discussing today that you need to like kind of remember. Okay, but it's an important trick. Also, this helps you with like other problems that we're going to discuss next, but more importantly, yeah, n is changing. Yeah, n is changing. N is this number. This is n. This variable over here is n. This is like the cumulative XOR, and this is like the property. Like, make sense now? So for 2 it was 3. So for like 6 it is 7, n plus 1. Okay. So for 10 to the power 15, 10 to the power 15, this I think is divisible by 4. So this minus 1 modulo 4, just a sec, modulo 4 will give us a remainder of 3. Okay, this will give us 3. Okay. Now we do a plus 1. So this will be equal to 4. Okay. Now for 4, the answer is 4. So that there is a pattern of n. So for 10 to the power 15 as well, the answer will be 10 to the power 15. Okay. So the pattern is like if there is n, then you are getting n in the 4, every 4, right? So for 10 to the power 15 also, the answer will be 10 to the power 15. Is it clear now? Like this is the pattern that is being followed: 1, n plus 1, 0, n. And with that, we see like which pattern is getting over there. Like this keeps on repeating after every 4 blocks. And n is actually the input over here, not any that you can like this n. Okay, I think I like miswrote the number. This n is not the input n. This is actually the n over here. This is the n for this particular number. So the input over here will work similar to, yeah, can you repeat?
मैं ये बोल रहा हूँ कि 1 n plus 1 जैसे कि हम 10 के लिए लिए मान लीजिए, ठीक है?
हाँ.
तो फर्स्ट वैल्यू के लिए 1 हुआ, सेकंड वैल्यू के लिए क्या होगा? n plus 1 मींस 10 वाला 1 या फिर 2 के लिए 1?
2 के लिए 1.
2 के लिए तो 3 होगा, उसके बाद फिर 0.
Okay, I got you. So okay, let me rewrite the variable names. This is okay.
So can you please explain it for 10? Sir, for 10.
Okay, let's. So you're saying let's go.
All values up to 10.
Yeah, let's go 4 more values ahead, right? That's what you're saying. Let's go 4 more values. So for 8 it's 8. Okay, so let's go to 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so then 8 XOR 9, so this will follow the this will be equal to 1. For 10 this will be equal to 11. For this will be equal to 0, and then this will be equal to 12. So note that if this is the n, you are getting 12 itself, because for
Sir,
12
I'm
this was
understanding how the numbers are coming. I want to know how can we find the Zor knowing these numbers.
okay. Okay,
Means,
so to get the answer you have to just extrapolate this logic, that the pattern is 1 n plus 1 0 n. So for any, so if this is 1 2 3 4, n for this, like n is over here 2, n is over here 4, then again the pattern remains same, 1 n plus 1 0 n. If this is 5 6 7 8, so n for this, you know, it's same as this number. So this is 8, this is 0, this is 9, this is 1. Then again if it's still, so you just put these values corresponding to that number. So if okay, let me give you like a complete logic for this, like how to get the, for any number, how to get the logic. So you just extrapolate it. So if n mod 4 is equal to 0, then you just print, let's say, because for n mod 4 this is same as the number, so you print n. Okay, n mod 4 equal to 1. So like this is the function that we're talking about, definition n. So if you take n, what is the answer for Zor from 1 2 up to n? Okay, this is what we are finding. If n mod 4 is equal to 1, so if it is equal to 1, then we always get 1, right? So for this also return 1. Mod 4 is equal to 2, then you return n plus 1. Okay, or else return 0. Okay, so this is the complete code for this. Is it now making sense, Vikash?
yes.
Okay, so now once we know this, let's try to see how we can find the XOR of numbers from L to R. Okay. So now we have a function like definition of, let's say, some n, which will give us XOR from 1 to, let's say, given n. Okay, so this will give us the XOR of all these values up to n, right? Now we need to find the XOR of numbers from L2 up to, let's say, up to R. Okay, so we have to find in some range from L to R. Any ideas? Anyone? Yep, that's correct. So there are two properties of XOR that you need to know. That XOR is actually commutative, and you can convert it, like you can like switch the order of the numbers in the XOR. Like it's also like for even 3 variables you can write it something like this. Okay, like you can swap in between as well. Okay, so these are property for XOR holds. Okay, this is a property of XOR that holds. Okay, now when you have a particular range from L to R, what you can do is, let's take an example. Let's say R is equal to 4 and L equal to 3. So what we will do is, we will take the range 1 to 4 and 1 to 2. Okay, and then we can find these two values very easily, right? Because these are like from 1 to some number, so we can use this definition n to get the number from 1 to n, and this gets us the number in order 1, because this is a function which implements an order 1 logic, right? Okay, so Siraj, I think it will be L minus 1, but I think all of like the rest are correct. Yeah. So the idea is, we will use this XOR from 1 to 4 and 1 to 2, and then we will XOR these two values as well. And what I claim is this will give us 3 XOR 4. So there is this nice property of XOR that when a number appears in XOR twice, it gets cancelled off. Okay, Why? Because let's say I'm having something like this 1 XOR 2 and there is this 1. I take XOR with this as well, okay? And then I can swap these two values. So I can write it using these properties. I have written the properties over here. So I can like write this, and then we know that x XOR x is 0. There is one more thing, x XOR 0 is equal to x. Okay, this is also true. So we can write this as, let's say, 0 XOR 2, and this is equal to 2. So it's basically what's this doing, that from 1 XOR 2 this gets cancelled, this 1 gets cancelled, right? Basically because it's coming twice. So in XOR, if something comes twice in the expression, like if there are like 10 variables which are getting XORed, and if 2 of them are having the same value, then that value gets cancelled off. Like it will not appear in the answer. Like you just remove those two variables and it will give you the same answer, because like that count over that bit is getting counted twice. So like it's a modulo 2 kind of thing going on. So just understand this property very well, because in XOR, everything, like every double count gets nullified. So this is a very important logic. And after that you can like simply use the logic of prefix sums. This idea comes from prefix sums, that right? So if you have to find from L to R, you can like have the like what is definition of N giving you, what definition of R? It's like a prefix sum up to R, right? Prefix XOR up to R, from 1 2 3 4 up to R, prefix XOR of R, right? And then if you take the XOR with definition of L minus 1, this is like a prefix XOR of up to L minus 1, right? And note, like in prefix sum as well, we just subtracted this part and we got a range from L to R, right? If you remember how prefix sum works. Similarly over here as well, the numbers from 1 2 3 so on up to L minus 1 will get counted in this and get counted in this. So they are going to get cancelled off, and rest everything will get XORed, right? So is it making sense for everyone? Is everyone clear with this? Can I have a +1 on the chat, and then we can move with the next? Okay. Now let's understand one thing that is very important. It's like a quick bugs that people make. Okay. So let's say you write this. Okay. Now, is there any potential mistake in this? So what is the value that this will give you? Like let's do this. Let's give this. What is the output that this will give you? Can someone quickly write in the chat? Okay, why am I taking even this bit? So ideally, like after practicing this much, I know how, like up to 10 or at least 12, what is the values of 2 to the power 10, like 2 4 8 16 32 64 1 2 3. These are all like now I have got like memorized because of usage record. Okay. Okay, so this gives 4. Okay, so you can quickly run this and check this, that this actually, if you like if you write cout this, it will give you 4. Now this happens because the binary operators have very low precedence, and this subtraction will happen first, and after that this shifting will happen. So this will get evaluated something like this. Okay, so wherever you are using bitwise operations, make sure that you put brackets, like for the to give all the directions that are needed for an expression. Like whenever you are writing an expression, make sure you give all the brackets to like make the expression complete. Okay, don't leave it to like the compiler to decide. Okay, so just write things like this if you want. Okay, don't keep things like for compiler to decide. It will like take the shifting operators in lower precedence. So get a habit of putting brackets if you are using bitwise operators. Okay, this will come in handy later on, like so that. So why am I saying these things when I'm like discussing problems? Because these are some common bugs that people make, and like if you can learn these things, like keep these things in like a checklist in your mind when you are debugging, it comes quite handy, right? That you will be able to find these bugs very fast. So make sure this you know. Okay. So now let's talk about. So we have something called bitset to create arbitrary sized bit numbers, like if you want to create like, so 64, like in long int you can keep up to 63 bits, right? Because the last bit is negative, but still you can keep up to 63 or 64 bits. So if you want to keep 1000 bits, you can use something called bitset in C++. I would advise you to read about this on your own, like just Google bitset and like read on CPP reference on what functions it gives you. So you can like just change the variable, like change zeros and ones at places. You can use the method dot count to count the number of ones. You can use the method flip, like there is a method for flip to flip the numbers. You can declare two variables BS and BT and take BS or BT, like or and all these things are works with bitset as well. So this is like a dynamic sized bitset that you can use in problems, but we would not be discussing about the syntax of these today. You are advised to read about these on your own. Okay, so these are not frequently used, but in some problems if you need a large bitset, then you can use them. Okay? And these are like faster than having arrays and stuff, so it works faster, and so every operation get divided by 32, so it's quite fast. So next I would be writing a code, and we would be understanding what, so you need to tell me what is the complexity of the code, okay? And then we'll be understanding what that code does. So let's say you have an integer n, okay? So I'm writing a loop. Okay. And that's it. Like there is an order one operation over here. You tell me the complexity of this particular code. N into 2 to the power n. Okay. That's not correct. Next ideas. So I think this first part is very simple to understand, right? This will actually loop from like let's say if I talk about this, so if I take 3, it will like loop on 0 0 0 0 0 1 0 1 0 0 1 1 0 1 0 0 1 0 1 1 1 0 1 1 1. Okay, this is what the first loop will do if you print the mask in each of the iteration. And actually this first loop can be used to like enumerate on all subsets of numbers, right? Like you can like for 3 numbers you can take subsets very easily using this kind of iterative loops. Okay. Now let's talk about what this second part is doing. So whenever I say this variable mask, okay, so this mask is a concept that, okay, let's say you want to maintain a set in numbers. That's also not correct. So set bits can be order n, right? So like number of set bits is actually order n, so can be at worst order n. So you might say that, okay, that is also as n into 2 to the power n, right? But that's not correct. Now let's coming back to this particular question. Now this mask means that, okay, there are 3 objects, find all possible like cases of subset in it. So this corresponds to this empty subset, this corresponds to just the first element, let's say a, this corresponds to b, this corresponds to ab, so on, right? So this is like a good way to iterate on like submasks. Okay. Now what is this particular loop doing over here? So is it actually working for number of bits only? Note that this part, this is not sub -1 and sub, it's not like removing bits one by one. Okay, like that is deliberate, like that's not a typing mistake. So try to think about this one, what this loop is doing, what is this internal loop doing. This is a very interesting code. So the first one actually, like given n numbers, it generates all 2 to the power n like subsets of that set, right? Is this clear to all that the first loop generates all 2 to the power n subsets of that set? Because if you take ones as that number taken and 0 as that number not taken, so every like binary number will represent a subset. Okay. Now what is this sub equal to? This sub loop is doing inside that. Anyone having any idea of that? So let's try to run it on one particular value. 1 1 0 1 0. Okay, let's try to run it on this. Let's see sub is this. So this is the mask. Okay, let's say this is mask in this loop, and then sub will start with this mask. Okay, so initially sub is equal to 1 1 0 1 1 1 1 0 1 0. Okay, now we take and with, we subtract 1, so this becomes 0 and this becomes 1, and then we take and, so this becomes 1 1 0, so sub becomes 1 1 0 0 0, right? Now we take subtract 1 1 0 0 1, so 1 0 0 1 1, like this is when you subtract 1 from this is sub now, right? So subtract 1 and take and with this mask, so it will give you 1 0 0 1 0, right? Now if you again subtract like 1 and take and with this will give you 1 0 0 0 0, right? Then if you again subtract 1, this is 0 1 1 1 1, and then if you like take and, this gives you 0 1 0 1 0. Okay. So these are like the submasks that we are getting. Let me like quickly point those values. So these are like the iterated subs on this. So if you see this, like if we talk about this, the second loop will actually generate all submasks of this mask. So this will generate first 1 1 0 1 0 0, then it will generate 1 1 0 0 0, 1 0 0 1 0, 1 0 0 0 0, then 0 1 0 1 0. Then this will generate subtract 1 and take and, so this will become 1 0 0 0 0. Then take again subtract 1, then again subtract 0. So there are 8 numbers over here, and all of these 8 numbers are actually submask of this. What I mean to say submask, that all these zeros will always remain 0 and the ones will change. Is it making sense? What are we doing over here? That given a mask, like, so it's saying something like this. I have, let's suppose, the first element, second element, and the fourth element. Now out of these 3 elements, how many submasks can I create? Okay, and so this internal loop is actually looping on that you can take all 3, you can take the first 2, you can take the first and last, you can take just the first one, you can take this and this. Is it making sense? How many of you are clear with this, that given a mask, like some of them are 0, they are not present, and some of them are 1, this internal loop, like this internal loop that we talked about, this internal loop that we talked about is actually looping over the submask of that mask. Okay, submasks of that mask. Is it making somewhat sense? How many of you understood this internal loop part? I think this is a bit complex, but this is an important loop idea. Okay. Okay, internal loop, fine. Okay, so let's understand this one. So when you had this, if you subtract 1 and take and with this, so we are always taking and with the mask, right? So we subtract 1 and take and with the mask. So when you're taking and with the mask, it has to be a submask. That means only those that are 1 can be 1 in the answer. That are 0, if you take and with that, it will become 0 forcefully, right? So that's why we're taking and with mask, so that those which are 0 will get 0. Okay, and then since we are subtracting 1, we are like generating the next subset. So let's say I have something like this. I have 1 2 and 4. So this particular mask means that I have the elements 1 2 and 4. Now out of these 4 elements, find out how many subsets I can create. So I can create all 3. I can create the first and second. So this means that next will mean I will take 1 and 4. Okay, this will create just 1. This will create 2 and 4. This will create having just 2. This will create just 4, and this will be the empty part. So this is saying that I have a mask which is like a subset of all n elements. So this is like a 5 elements. So there were 5 elements. I was looping on its subset, right? Okay, so this was looping on its subset. So I have now 3 elements. Now out of those 3 elements, if I want to again loop on their subset, this is a mask, right? This is not like complete one. So for that, to iterate on submasks, we generally use this particular loop over here. Okay, so this is like a syntax that you will have to know. Like this is not very trivial to know. Like this is quite non-trivial. But to iterate on submask, you need to know how this works. Okay. So everyone clear with this? So try to run this one and see like how, like what are getting generated, and that will like help you on like what it's exactly doing. What is TC? What is time complexity? Okay, yeah. So we're coming to that. No worries. So now that is again quite complex from this, because like what are we doing over here? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now we are iterating on its submask. Like we are choosing some elements from this to come to this submask. Let's say 1, 2, and 4. And then we are also looping on their submask, right? Is this clear to all or not? That this is what we are doing. We are choosing like this mask will choose element from this n. Like there are 2 to the power n subsets, and out of that, this mask will give you a configuration of which element you chose, right? And out of those chosen element, this submask will give you the configuration of which all we chose again in this internal loop. Like we are looping on the subsets. Okay? So for this, you are looping on let's say 1 and 2, okay? Something like this. So basically, the question is given a like let's suppose there is a set, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like there is a set of size n. You choose a set A which contains some elements out of this. Let's call this set A. Then out of this A, you choose some set B which has some elements out of this B. Yeah, it's kind of subset of subset. True, exactly. So right now you need to tell me how many ways are there to perform this experiment. Like there are n elements. You choose some element into a set A, and then you choose some element out of A into a set B. How many number of ways are there to perform this particular like experiment, or how many ways are there to count this particular scenario? So this is now a counting problem. This is like no longer like a looping part thing. Anyone having any idea? Now you should be able to do this. Like it's not easy, but you should be able to form an idea that some elements can go from this to this, and then they will get some of them will be chosen to this, from this to this, right? Anyone with the answer? So when you're doing like problem solving on some competitive, even for like if you're doing it for competitive purposes, if you're doing for like CDC purpose or any purposes, like any like coding rounds or this placement purposes, you should be knowing some like maths as well, because these will be needed in questions. Now even coding round has started giving like questions of like maths and questions. Okay, so this is actually equal to 3 to the power n. Nicely done. So now there are 2 ways. First way is like the expression that Saurav has written, that choose some elements of this, like n choose some I, and those elements will go to this, okay? And out of those I elements, you have 2 to the power I subsets in B, right? So it's actually summation of this, and this is n choose I multiplied by, for each of the I chosen element, you take all its subset in B. Okay, so this is like forming A, and this is like forming B, and you do it on all possible sizes of A. Okay, I equal to 0 to n. And if you talk about this is actually like binomial expansion of, like if you write 3 to the power n as 2 plus 1 to the power n, and then expand it binomially, you get this term. Okay, so this is actually 3 to the power n only. Now a very simple way to think about this would be like, let's suppose there is some element. Okay, so there are n elements, right? Some element will go to A, some element will go to B, and some element will not go anywhere. Like they will not be chosen in the first set. Okay, so every element can be like chosen the first time and then not selected, chosen first, chosen second, and not chosen first. So every element has 3 choice, so it will be 3 to the power n. Okay, so you can also think about this combinatorially. Okay, make sense? Is everyone clear or not on this one? That we are basically choosing subset of subset. So for that, you can like count it in this way. Like every element has 3 choices. Either it will not be selected in either in A or in B. If it gets selected in A, it might not get selected in B, or else it will get selected in both A and B, right? So there are 3 choices for every element. So it's 3 to the power n. Is this clear to all or not? Like this is independent for every element. So that's why 3 to the power n. Yep. Makes sense. So I understand that this is a bit of maths, but I guess you will have to learn a maths when you are doing programming. Okay? And you should not like reject these things. Like these are important as well. Okay? So don't feel that okay, I'm doing programming, I should not learn maths. You will have to learn a bit of maths to be good at programming. But not everything. Like just combinatorics and some number theory. That's it. Okay. Let's move to the next topic then. So now, till now we have been discussing a lot of techniques like small code related techniques, tricks, or some smaller problems. Now we will start with like some application ideas of problems. Okay. So now let's start with this particular idea. Let's say you are given an array of size n. Okay. Let's call this array ARR. Okay. Now you have to find the summation of okay. So you are given an array ARR, and that contains like a n is up to 10 to the power 5. Okay. And each of these values can be up to 10 to the power 9. Now you have to find the sum of all pair XORs. So like you basically have to find this particular value. Answer equal to 0 for I belongs to like let's say 1 to n, for j belonging to let's say I plus 1 to n. Answer plus equals to ARR of I XOR ARR of j. So you have to find the final answer of this code. Okay, like this particular part, like all pairs XOR, add the value and find that sum. Okay. Now of course you cannot loop this, like you cannot run this particular loop. Why? Because I've given over here n is up to 10 to the power 5. So order n square solution will give you a time limit exceeded, right? So we have to do this better than order n square. So how can we do this particular thing? Think about this for a minute. J is up to n, right? From I to this will be equal to I plus 1 to n, right? Like I comma j pair belongs to like n comma n. So these are like two elements of this array, and for all pair of elements, you just need to sum the XOR or XOR, whatever you say. So is the question clear first of all to all of you? I think like it's like there is like no direct approach, like, but at least the question is clear, right? Can I have a +1 in the chat if the question is clear, or like you can ask if some part is not clear of the question? Okay. Because this will take some time, so you need to at least understand the question first to understand the solution idea. Okay. So over here we have to like choose two elements, right? XOR with prefix sums helps us in like subarray kind of stuff. Okay. So over here, like we have two separate elements to be chosen. So I don't think like prefix sum is going to help us in this particular problem. Distributive over sum? No, it's not. Like this is not true. Like A XOR B plus A XOR C is not equal to A XOR B plus C, right? This is not true. You can like take examples and see this particular thing. But, okay. You can say 3A is equal to 3, B is equal to 2, and C is equal to 1. So in that case, this particular expression will give you 1 plus 2, which is equal to 3, but this will give you 3 XOR 3, which is equal to 0. It's not. Okay. So we have to take all two pairs. So I don't get it where the mask is coming. 2 bits set. Take mask with 2 bits set. Why 2 bits set? Like there can be like in this XOR there can be like some up to 32 bits set, right? Yeah, not getting the exact idea. Okay, so let's first of all like quickly look at one example. Let's say there is like n is equal to 3 and the numbers are 1, 3 and 7. So in this case this will be 1 XOR 3 plus 1 XOR 7 plus 3 XOR 7. This will be equal to 2 plus 6 plus 4. This will be equal to 12, right? So for this particular array the answer is 12. So we will be using this particular sample case to understand what is happening. Okay. So the whole idea of this problem is XOR can be distributed over sum if you solve it bitwise. I mean to say you solve the problem for individual bits separately. Now let me explain what I just said. So what I'm saying is XOR can be separated out in the sum if you process each of the bits separately. Now let's say I have these two numbers, right? So one is 1 0 and let's just write something over here. Let's write 1 3 7 in their binary formats. So this is your MSB, this is your LSB for these three numbers. Okay, so this would be 1. Okay, something like this. No, 1 XOR 3 XOR 7 is not an answer. No, it's not like submask. We are just like iterating on two pairs, right? 1 XOR 3. I don't get you, like pairs, right? This is pairs. So this loop just counts pairs, right? This code is self-explanatory. So over here, this is the binary numbers, right? Now let's understand what I just said, that this question can be solved like solving each bit separately. Now let's suppose I have two numbers 3 and 7. Okay, so let's talk about this bit. When I'm taking XOR like 3 XOR 7, I can take this as this 0 XOR 1 multiplied by 2 to the power 2 plus 1 XOR 1 multiplied by 2 to the power 1 plus 1 XOR 1 multiplied by 2 to the power 0, right? I hope this is clear to all, that I can write the XOR of two numbers. So they happen bitwise, right? So whatever the result of bitwise is, you just multiply it with 2 to the power 2, right? This is how you represent binary in 10 base. So this is what conversion would look like. Is this clear to all or not? Can I have a +1 on this? Okay, so now we know that like when you are like taking XOR of two numbers, each of the bits like get XORed separately and then they get multiplied with their 2 to the power 2 format, like their 2 to the power I format, where I is their position in the bits, right? Okay, so now let's say you have these three numbers, right? So somewhere, okay, let's just shift a bit. Okay, somewhere in the expression, so if we just focus on the things that are happening over here, like which are getting multiplied by 2 to the power 3 in the final sum, so note that we are summing this over all pairs, right? So there are sums over here and there is sum over here, so this sum and this sum can be like exchanged in like their ordering, right? We can sum over these 2 to the power 2 separately, 2 to the power 1 separately, 2 to the power 0 separately, and then we can sum them over separately. I'm explaining you that with an example. So let's take this particular scenario. Let's just take two numbers. Like there is another 1 XOR 7 in this particular expression, but I'm not writing it for now. Okay, so this we can write as 0 XOR 0 times 2 to the power 2 plus 0 XOR 1 times 2 to the power 1 plus, so I'm just doing this bitwise XOR over here, plus 1 XOR 1 times 2 to the power 0, right? This is how you can like take 1 XOR 3. Similarly, you can write 1 XOR 0 times 2 to the power 2 plus, so the answer of this first expression will be this term right over here, but I'm just expanding it a bit. Okay, plus this would be 1 1, so this 1 XOR 1 times 2 to the power 1 plus 1 XOR 1 times 2 to the power 0, right? This is the second term. Okay, now what if we had done it like pairwise? So what we would have done is we would have taken the sum like this and would have taken sum of all such pairs, right? Now instead of computing this first and then taking this sum, we can rotate the order of summations in this, and we can compute these sums first, okay, with the same 2 to the power I multiplied, and then like somehow take like multiply it with 2 to the power I and then take sum in this direction. Is this idea making sense or not? Like instead of taking sum like this, so this 1 XOR 3 is like sum of these numbers, right? So instead of taking this sum first and like then summing it over all pairs, we are now doing like for each 2 to the power 2 in this summation first, and then summing it over all 2 to the power i's different size. Is this rotation of order of summation making sense or not? Can I have a +1 on the chat? We'd go slow in this problem, and this should be clear to all. Okay. Okay, Anurag, not clear. Let's. So, okay, yeah, fine. So when we were taking like summations of OR pairs in the expression, what we were doing is we are like evaluating this XOR by writing it in this form, right? So evaluating this XOR is like getting this summation. This summation over here written over here, this is like the value of the XOR, right? This is clear to all. So now if you want to get this XOR, rather than like computing this XOR then and there, what we are doing is we are just for now writing it like this, and instead of summing it first, we are summing this particular value for all the terms that will come up in the answer, like on this, like there would be some term like this as well, right? 1 XOR 7. So we will write that as well over here below this. So for 1 XOR 7, this will be 1 XOR 0, 2 to the power 2 plus 1 XOR 0, 2 to the power 1 plus 1 XOR 1, 2 to the power 0, something like this. So instead of adding these values first, we will add these values first and then add it column wise. So there are like 9 sums, there are 9 terms now. So initially we were like summing column wise, like row wise first and then taking some column wise. Now what we will do is we will take some column wise first and then take some row wise. Okay, it will give us the same value, right? Like it's the sum of these 9 terms. Is it now making sense? Like the idea that we are going to do, that's it. Okay, now it's still not efficient. You still need to write these terms and get the answer. Like it's still n square only, but the idea of this transformation of summation ordering, is this making sense or not? Can I have a +1 on that, on this, if everyone is clear or not? Like, because this is the crux of the problem, this transformation. So what I have actually done is I have processed like this 2 to the power 2, right? So these are all the bits that happen to occur at the second position in the numbers. Like I'm just processing these numbers right now. Over here, like when I'm processing these part, I'm processing these numbers, right? Okay. So now we will have to first calculate this particular value over here. Okay, let's try to calculate one such value. Okay, so now in this position, in 2 to the power 2, only these value like this 0, 0 and 1 will contribute somehow. Okay, like we know that XOR is like a bitwise operation, so no lower order terms or higher order terms like will influence this particular ith bit, right? So now let's say we have an array which contains like 0, 0 and 1, and we want to find all pair, like the sum of all pairs XOR, like so it's either 0 or 1. Okay, so can we now optimize this particular like computation? Can we, so there are a lot of terms over here, but can we find this term like quickly? So we have this particular task over here that we know there are, let's say, 3 numbers over here. So we know those 3 numbers. Now, like what is the sum of, so this particular sum in this column will actually be something like this, right? 0 XOR 0, this pair, plus 0 XOR 1, this pair, plus this pair, 0 XOR 1. Okay, and then when we have to add it to the answer, it will get multiplied by 2 to the power 2, because we had to multiply it with 2 to the power 2 over here, right? Is it making sense? And this will get added to the answer. Okay, so now tell me that if you have an array, you know that like zeros and ones, how do you quickly find the number of like sum of all pairs, like the XOR of all pairs? Okay.
So we can have the number of zeros and number of ones.
Yes.
And the product will be the number of times one will occur.
Exactly.
Like in the zone.
Exactly, that's correct. So it's not max of, yeah, I think Benial and Saurav is also correct. Siraj, it's not like max of 0 counter 1 count, it's like multiply, right? Because like in a pair, if one of them has to be 1 and other one has to be 0, right? So you have a set of positions where it's 0, a set of positions where it's 1. So you have to like find out the number of like matching that you can create, like a one edge that you can create. So it's like number of ones. Okay, so this is like simple counting, the multiplication rule, right? So these many positions, so there would be like, if there are n terms over here, there would be n squared terms over here, but we know that these many terms will be 1 and rest will be 0. So anyways, we don't want to give 0, right? We don't want to count zeros, like that's not going to contribute anything to the answer. So we want to count the number of ones. So instead of doing this n square computation over here, we can now count the number of zeros, we can count the number of ones and multiply the number of occurrences. Make sense? And that will give us this particular like all pair sums in this bit in order n, right? This we can calculate in order n. Okay, and now whatever the number of times 1 we get in this particular answer, multiplied by 2 to the power I or 2 to the power 2 in this case, is like the contribution to the answer. So we will do this particular operation for all the bits. Like first we did for this bit, then we will do this for this column over here, this bits over here. For that also we will add the contribution to the answer. For this particular bits as well, we will add the contribution to the answer, and whatever we get is the like total answer that is going to be there. Like, so I understand that some people might have lost at some place, I might have got lost at some place, so I'm just quickly iterating on what we are trying to do over here. So we split the numbers bitwise. Okay, and now over here we understood that, okay, if I compute each of the bits separately and multiply it with 2 to the power I for that bit's position, that is going to get like the contribution of that bit. Similarly, this column, right? Every column we can get the sum separately. Okay, now for each of the bit position, like each of the I bit, like from MSB to LSB, is actually like one column in this row. So we will process each column separately. Okay, now for each of the columns, what you will have is like number of zeros and number of ones in order n, rather than doing an n square. And over there you can now like optimize it to order n for every column. So there are like 32 bits in max, so you can get the answer in 32 into n. So don't worry, we will code this and it will make more sense. So this is, we are going to code. Okay, So is the like thing making sense? So the basic idea that like we are trying to learn from this particular problem is this idea is quite prevalent in like binary operations, that okay, when you have like just binary operations, so each of the bit is independent. Okay, so when you need to sum up something, what you can do is find out the contribution of each bit position from most significant bit to the least significant bit. Okay, and then add them out together. So rather than like summing it for the expression f of some like some numbers like x comma y, what we do is like we just split it in bits, and rather like find out the sum for all pairs in that bit multiplied by 2 to the power I, and then sum this, because there are 32 terms only in this. 32 or 64, the number of terms that question. So this is the whole like the idea that comes up in problems, and like that you should learn from this problem. Okay, that split the question bitwise, solve it in each of the bits, and then sum up the solution. Okay, because each of the bits act independently. Okay, okay, is this making some sense? Can we move to the code part of this? Like, can I have a +1? So we will implement this, so things will become more clear on how to implement this, like, and what is happening in like in coding part as well. Okay. So I'm taking 8 points separately. Anyways, we don't need the actual answer. Like, so if you think about this, in this particular question, you actually don't need the, like, once you get the number of zeros and number of ones in each of the bit, you don't actually need the numbers itself, right? Like, they make no more sense. So what we would be doing is we will be creating like a count array of each of the bits. Okay. Now, if the two numbers are less than 10 to the power 9, their XOR will also be like the less than equal to the next power of 2 greater than 9, to 10 to the power 9. Okay. So if two numbers are less than equal to 10 to the power 9, their XOR will also be less than equal to the next 2's power from 10 to the power 9. So they will like remain in the same number of bits only, because like if it's 0 for both of them, like after the most significant bit, it's not going to like anywhere going to get 1. So with this we can say that okay, there can only be 29 bits in this, because 2 to the power 30 is greater than 10 to the power 9. This is some fact that I'm stating, that 2 to the power 30 is greater than 10 to the power 9. Okay, this is true. Okay, so you can like write and check. So if you are not sure about these things, what you can keep is like simply just keep it up to 31, because I think 31 will be for sure will be greater than this, because we know that for int the range is up to this, up to uh, 2 in, for integer it's up to 2 into 10 to the power 9. So this should be sufficient. Okay. Now we take numbers one by one. Okay. Now in that number we have to find how, like, which all bits are there, right? So in each of the bits position over here, we wanted to find the number of 1 bits in this, right? In this particular like in this particular bit position. So we will count that. That's what this count is counting. Okay. So for integer j is equal to 0, j is less than equal to 31, j plus plus. Okay. So since we are solving it int, I am still using like 1 shifted by I. Okay. You can use something like this, I shifted by j and 1. Okay. If the jth bit of x is 1, okay, then count of j plus plus, because this number contains 1 in that jth bit. So we are now counting in the jth bit how many numbers have ones, counting ones. That's what we are doing over here. Okay. Now let's talk about what we'll be doing next. Next would be like calculating this for each of the bits. This we know that the number of zeros and number of ones is getting answered, and we know that the number of let's say total numbers is n, and if we know the number of ones is equal to x, then total number of numbers which has 0 at this position is n minus x, right? So we have to just multiply x multiplied by n minus x. Okay. So these things might overflow, so we need to keep things like this. Okay. Long answer. In fact, in this particular problem, the constraint should be a bit less. I will explain why. Because it might still overflow long because you are having 10 to the power 9 and then you are having 10 to the power 10 now. Okay. It will somehow fit. Let's say you have the answer equal to 0. I will explain this one just after this. So now for each of the bits, we will find out the contribution to the answer. Okay. So the number of times 1 will occur in this summation, in this all pair XORs in that particular bit position is equal to, let's say, long temp equal to count of j multiplied by count, let's say n minus count of j. Okay, this is the number of times it will happen. Now there is a mistake in this code. I will ask you to find that out later on, but let's say temp is over here. Next we have like answer plus equals to temp multiplied by 1 shifted by j, because the number of times we get 1 at this position, all of them were getting multiplied by 2 to the power, like this 2 to the power I, right over here. If I talk about this, all of these things are getting multiplied by 2 to the power 1 over here, 2 to the power 0 over here. So irrespective of the number of times you get, over whatever the number of times you get 1 in this, it gets multiplied by the 2 to the power j, the positions 2 to the power term, right? So we have to multiply it with this. Let's keep it in LL. Anyways, if you keep it in 1 to the power j as well, it will work because this is in int and this part is LL, so this will become LL. Okay, but still let's keep it LL, and then you can print the answer. Now, what is the mistake in this particular code? Can someone point that out? A simple mistake. And by okay, nice. Okay, so no, don't typecast. Yeah, 1 LL count j, exactly. You have to. This is the part which is problematic. So you don't need to like replace every int. So just this solves the problem because we kept a count. Count was an integer, right? But count and n minus count can become long because n by 2 multiplied by n by 2 and n by 2 is 10 to the power 5. It might overflow the integer. Okay. So in that case, keeping this is better. And this is in fact the whole code for this problem. Okay. So let's say if I try to run this on inputs 1, 3, 7. Okay, just a second. There's some mistake in this. Okay, got it. So one more thing that I had to explain in this one is count 0, size of count. So there is this function called memset which gives you like, which sets the array size to 0. Why will count overflow? Okay, so count is a variable which is integer, right? And n minus count can be integer, is integer as well because n and count are integer. So these are of the numbers of range 10 to the power 5 because there are 10 to the power 5 numbers in the problem, right? Remember we had constraint of 10 to the power 5. Okay, so both of them are 10 to the power 5, so it might overflow. Now it's so when you are defining variables in local scope, okay, I don't frequently do that, but anyways, like you can, like for this simple variables you can keep it in local scope. So when you're keeping variables in local scope, you can like initialize it, fill it with zeros. Now there is a very important thing over here. You can use memset, but please note this, that memset only works with two values, two important values, -1 and 0. If you want to fill an array with value 1, don't use memset's count 1. It will not work. Okay, you have to use it only with 0 or -1. Memset does not work with 1. It does not work with a lot of different numbers. So it's rather better to use either fill STL expression or just loop over, like it hardly takes much time, right? Okay. So we take this expression, we just loop over up to 31. Let's make it up 30 only because I think that's sufficient enough for this particular problem. Because 2 to the power 30 would be like will be less than equal to this. Now this will be equal to, let's say 3 numbers 1, 3, 7. Should I really get a 12? Yeah, get it. Okay. N will be the position of set bits. N will be position of set bits of largest number. No, n is the number of numbers given in the array, right? N is the number of numbers given in the array, and like we are assuming that there are up to 30 bits. So even if there is a number which contains, like, let's suppose only 3 bits, like all the numbers contains only 3 bits. Let's suppose 1, 0, 1, 1. Let's say 2 bits. So even if there are zeros, you can consider those arrays like all 0 arrays, and like in that contribution will be 0 because there is no pair which will give 1. So the answer contribution to that would be 0. So we can count that, right? So that's why we are doing it up to 30, because we know that it will fit in integer, and for each of them we are counting the number of times that bit occurs, and then we are like doing the logic over here that we discussed, that for OR it's number of and zeros and number. Now let's talk about some manipulations, some like changes to this particular problem itself. Let's say I had asked you that find out the summation for ARR of I and ARR of J. So what would have been the change in the proof? I think this is not a proper syntax anyways, but I think what you mean to say is, so okay, v of n comma 0, so that will take order n, right? It will initialize it with, it will create a vector of n size and it will initialize it with zeros, like faster than defining it ourselves, but internally it still does it in order n. Okay, yeah, I think Saurav is already correct. So I think no, number of, it's not number of ones, yeah, number of ones only, choose 2 exactly. So yeah, all of you are correct. Yeah, so you basically, in this expression what we are doing is we were taking contribution of each of the bits, right? Now and also works bitwise, so we can also like take contribution of each of the bits, right? So we have to take like this will become and, right? So only when both the numbers will be 1, we will get a number, we will get 1 in this, and we will get a contribution to the answer. So instead of like taking this part over here, number of zeros multiplied by number of ones, for let's say for and, this will become number of ones, choose 2, right? Now what about or? Okay. That makes sense. So there are two ways in which you can think about it. Either you subtract like total minus number of like zeros, choose 2, or you can also say it's not n square, it's n choose 2 actually, because we are counting non-equal pairs, right? So it will be n choose 2 minus total number of zeros, choose 2. So one can be n choose 2 minus number of numbers having like number of zeros in this particular bit, choose 2, right? All of the other things will give us 1. One other way you can do is like whatever answer we got, number of zeros multiplied by number of ones, okay, plus this part, like the things which are only and plus the things that are only XOR will give you the number of times it will be OR, right? Because like 1 comma 1 is considered in and, 1 comma 0 0 comma 1 is considered in or XOR, right? So if you like add the answers of both of these two things, you will also get the answer. So it can either be this particular number, or you can like add the answers of this and the for the XOR case. That's also possible. Both of will actually be the same number in fact. So if it is like xy, you will get x into y minus plus x choose 2, or in the other way it will be like x plus y choose 2 minus y choose 2. You can see that both of these are actually equal if you expand it. Okay. So I think that's all for this particular problem. I hope this idea is now clear, that how can you split each problem into like bits and then solve for each of the bits. Okay. Is this problem clear? Can we move to the next one? So too much of effort for one particular problem, right? But think this is a very good idea that comes up often. Now let's talk about few expressions that are like that exist and is like that is true, but in sometimes you are given like, let's say, so in an let's say I'm giving you a problem that you are given an array A of size ARR. Okay, find like n array ARR of size n, and you need to find the number of pairs I comma j such that ARR, write this, ARR of I and ARR of j plus ARR of I or ARR of j, this term is equal to some given value x. Okay, so you are given this target x. Okay, and you need to find the number of pairs in the array such that if you like do this operation, like calculate this number for those two pairs, like you take two pairs I and j and then calculate their ARR of I and ARR of j plus ARR of I or ARR of j, you need to find if it is equal to the target or not. Okay, so I don't want the solution completely. How many of you think can solve this particular problem? Okay, so I think if you have identified it, you have said +1 by now, but let's assume, let me give you an expression now that I can say that this as is actually equal to ARR of I plus ARR of j. Okay, this expression is actually equal to this. So find the number of pairs whose sum is equal to the target given. How many of you now can solve this particular problem? Okay, yeah, you should be able to solve this, right? Yeah, same as previous session, exactly. So in the previous session we discussed a problem where you had to like find out the number of subarrays. In this you have to find the number of pairs, but the idea remains the same. You keep looping and you keep a hash map, like you can keep a map with the number of counts of a particular value. Okay, so yeah, so as you can see, sometimes expression can be disguised in a bit manipulation form, and you might be given, okay, find out this. So let us just quickly iterate on two forms of expression that are like that has previously occurred in some contests. Okay, so let's say I can give you this, that a plus b is actually equal to a and b plus a or b. Okay, this is true for all numbers. As you can see, like if you can put any for any particular bit, try to count the contribution in both the sides, it will be same. Okay, you can also take it like this, it is same as 2 times a and b plus a XOR b. Okay, this is also true. So what sometimes happen is people like disguise the simple things into like complicated forms and like ask you the same question. Okay, so you just need to understand, okay, this given expression is nothing but this. Okay, and then it's easier to solve. So in fact, like this particular expression even occurred in one of the code forces contests, and the main challenging part of that problem was just to identify this like reduction of this expression to this expression. That's it. Okay. So if you can identify that, then you are done, or else like you will keep struggling with the problem, like how to solve it for every bit and things and other stuff. Okay. Because solving this particular problem over here, like there are too many like parts, right? And or how do you manage both of them? Okay, so this is difficult. Okay. So next we will discuss one more idea, which is inherent to like bit manipulation problems. So we will not like completely solve this problem. We will discuss the idea that is used in this particular problem so that you can like get the sense of it. So you are given an array n and there is an ARR array given to you is of size n. Okay, you need to find the maximum value of any two pairs ARR of I or ARR of j. So you can pick any two indexes in this array, not this should not be same, and you take the XOR you have to find the maximum that you can make. So how many of you can solve this problem? Like how many of you know this problem? Okay. Yeah, n log n. Yeah. Yeah, n is up to 10 to the power 5. So most of the bit manipulation problems will be of n 10 to the power 5. Okay. Any ideas? Anyone? So let's just quickly get into the idea. This is not trivial at all. No. We don't go into that particular idea. So the main idea that I want to discuss in this is when you have to maximize or minimize bitwise operations. Like in the previous question as well, we had an idea, right? That just split the summation with respect to each of the bits and then solve it. So in this particular type of problems as well, there is an idea. Let's first let me quickly explain that. So when you have to maximize an expression, like a single term expression where you have like some binary operation between two numbers, or like there is some binary operation going on in between things. Okay. So if all the operators over here are binary, it's generally better to solve the problem in a greedy fashion, that you try to make the most significant bit as quickly 1 as possible, rather than keeping it 0 and deciding things later on. Okay. So let's say I have like a choice where, like, let's suppose I'm solving this problem from the most like 10, 30 from, I will find the answer for the 30th bit, then I will solve it for 29th bit. Okay. Then I will solve it for 20th bit and so on. Like I will keep going down in this fashion up to 0. Okay. So let's suppose I'm at 3rd bit now. Okay. And I have a choice that I have a number which has 1 in this position and a 0 in this position. There are like 4 numbers which has like 1 in this bit and 0 in this bit. Like there are 2 numbers which has 1 in this bit. There are 2 numbers which has 0 in this bit. Okay. So what I'm saying is, it's in the best interest of me to create. So when I take XOR, it's better to keep 1 over here than 0. So if you take 1s, that means you have to now XOR these two, right? So even if you do worse at the lower levels, if you even make the XOR 0 in the lower levels, if you make 1 over here, it's still better than keep making this 0. Okay, so sorry, I'm not still selecting these two. I'm selecting like one of the 1s and one of the 0s and then making XOR 1. And even if I choose both of them and I make the lower ones 0 by choosing those two, it's still better than making this 0 and making lower ones all 1s, because this number is bigger than this number. So this number over here is actually 2 to the power 3, and this is nothing but 2 to the power 3 minus 1. So this is greater than this. Okay. So what I'm saying is, I will start from the highest bit, and if I can make 1 over here, I will definitely make a 1. I will never do something like this, that I will keep 0 over here so that I can later on make 1. That is never going to be optimal. Rather, keep 1 over here, and then for the rest of the thing, try to do as much as you can. Okay, that's it. So is this idea clear to all or not? That, okay, when I'm coming from the highest bit, I will build my answer. So this answer is over here, like this will be some answer, right? There is this answer variable. So I will build this answer from the highest bit, okay, most significant bit, and for each of the bits, like from the highest bit, if for a particular bit I can make this 1, I will make it 1 by using some greedy, like I will do it greedily and make it 1. And then for rest of the thing, I will decide on, okay, how from rest of my options, how will I make that maximum. Okay. So I will like, if I add a particular bit, I can make it 1, that's it. Is this idea clear to all or not? So how we will do it is a different thing, but is this part clear or not? That if I make this 1, and even if I make the rest of the things 0, it's still better than making this 0. And even if I do it optimally after everything, it's still 1, right? So this is still greater than this. So it's better to do 1 over here itself. So this is like the whole gist of this problem, like the idea that you should learn from this one. Let's now like understand how you can like solve this particular problem. So what we will use is like you have, let's say we maintain two sets. Let's say we maintain two sets. So let's say we have to choose one element from this and one element from this. Okay. No, let's create two functions. I'm just hypothetically writing these things. So select two given a set of elements A, and select two given a set of elements A and B. Okay. So what is this? There are two functions. Okay. In case of any binary operation, this works, right? So when I say binary operations, it's just binary operations, and there is a maximum or minimization that you need to do. Okay. Like if there's a summation in between, then it will not work. Like, okay. But for most of the binary operations, this works, because I'm not like, it's not about binary operation, it's about binary answer that we're talking about. If for the answer you can make a bit 1, then make it 1, because even if you do the rest of the things over here, it's not going to do as good as that. Okay? So it's not about binary operation, it's about the binary form of the answer. And this holds true in case of binary operations. This idea can also be extended to like any different questions where there is no binary operation, but the answer you form is from highest bit and all. So something similar to something similar to this also comes up in like competitions. Okay. So let's talk about how we just solve this. So we have def a comma a, which gives you select 2 from A, which gives best answer. Okay, which gives best answer. Okay. So there is this def A, and there is another function def A comma B. Okay, definition A comma B, which when you give it two sets, what it does is it will like select one from A, one from B, and make the maximum. Okay, so these are the two sets that we are defining, two functions. Okay, and apart from these things like A and B, I will also keep one more thing, that is like the bit that we are processing currently. So what this means is like I'm currently I'm considering 29th bit, and I have like already created the answers for the higher bits. So now what I will do is, let's say let's consider both of the functions, how we will design these things. Okay, let's say there is one set and you have to take two elements. Okay, so let's say we split and we have to consider the current bit. Okay, this is the bit that we are solving for now. So there can be three types of elements, right? There can be two types of element. Either it has 1 in bit or 0 in bit, right? So whichever bit position is that we are considering now, either a number can have 1 in this bit position or 0 in this bit position, right? So like create two sets out of these two types. Okay, now if the size of this is greater than 0 and this is also greater than 0, then note that there is at least one number which has 1 in the bit and 0 in the bit, right? So we can take XOR of those two and get a better answer, like get 1 in this position. Is this clear to all or not? That if we have at least one element in this 1's bit and one element in the 0's bit, then we can do this problem by keeping 1 in this particular bit position and solve it for the smaller problems. Okay. So what we will do is, if this is both greater than 0, take one in this bit in the answer and solve for like these two sets. Let's call this A dash and B dash. Okay. And then call def of A dash B dash bit minus 1. So we will solve for smaller bits and we will like divide into two parts, and now from this we have to choose one, from this we have to choose one, and since in the 1th bit, in this particular bit, one has 0 and one has 1, their XOR will be 1 finally, and we know that we have to greedily make it 1, right? Is this making sense? Or else what we do is, if let's suppose if both of them are greater than 0, then only this holds, right? This works. There can be one more case, then either of them is 0, right? Like one of them is 0. Make sense? So if let's suppose A dash is 0, like A dash is empty, I mean to say, let's write it something like this because this is set. Okay. So what we do is like we just call def b dash bit minus 1, or else if b dash is equal to 0, we make def a dash bit minus 1. Okay. So if this is just a single set, and in that set we have to take two elements, this is the logic that we will implement. Similarly, there can be another case where there are two sets and you have to take one element from this and one element from this. In this, the logic becomes more complicated, that okay, for this also you create two sets, 1 0, for this you create 1 0. Okay, and then whether there is like one pair which exists from this and this, is there a pair which exists from this and this, and based on that we will recurse on lower levels. So I'm not going into implementation completely, but the whole idea of this problem was to understand that if you process things from the highest bit to the lowest bit, you can solve the problem in a better, like you will always get the optimal answer. Okay. Is this part clear? Like we are not talking about completely solving this problem right now, that's okay. Like if even if you are not 100% clear on how to implement this particular problem, but the main thing that you should learn from this is, okay, from a test case. Okay, so let's say, so the test case will actually depend on the like implementation idea that we will use, but you can think in this way, right? Like, so I think there is, I don't feel like the idea that I'm talking about needs a test case. I'm like, if you want to run this idea of this division and all with a test case, that's a different thing. But today we are not considering the implementation part of this. We just want to learn the idea that, okay, if you are taking two numbers, like if you want to take two numbers and take a XOR, it's better to create a 1 and then followed by all zeros rather than keeping this 0 and making all of the rest of the things 1. Okay, if you are building things from highest bit to the lowest bit. Is that clear? So there are two ways to particularly implement this solution. One is this like building these two sets repeatedly. So maybe let me like show you one particular implementation of this. Let me quickly, just give me a minute. Let me, I think I can get the code of that. No, this is not in Subclicker. This is a very famous problem, in fact, like maximum XOR of two numbers. So this is a very famous problem. There are two solution ideas to this. I'm not discussing this because we will pick up this problem again in a different session, in different module, which is to be precise strings. And in that strings, we discuss a technique called trie. Okay, there's a data structure called trie. In that, we will represent things in like zeros and ones. Like we will create nodes, and based on that, we will move in that trie. But since the implementation of that is more easy, we are not discussing this right now. But again, this makes a lot, like the idea remains same for a lot of different problems. So let me quickly yeah. So let me quickly give you this. Just a second. Okay. So the idea that I was talking about, how to implement that, let's quickly go through this. So if you have two sets and you have to choose one like element from one of them, so what you do is like you create for A which has 1, for A which has 0, for B which has 1, for B which has 0, and then like if there is an element of A which has to be like taken, like there is an element in A's 1 and B's 0, then they will like, if there is like no element in these two sets, then like you have to recurse on the lower level. So you split it into the lower bits, like you make the bit go down a bit, like go down to the next bit, or else if A dot size is there and B dot size is also there, then you like choose an element from A's 1 and B's 0, or you choose an element from A's 0 or B's 1 and you like do it recursively. So that's the whole idea. And initially you like have the numbers, so you like for the first bit, you like, for each of the bit you like divide it into, for the first bit you divide it into two of the numbers like A and B, whether they have zeros and ones, and based on that you recurse. Like that's it. So this is the whole code. So I will give you this code so that if you want to like understand this implementation. So this is a vector implementation of this particular problem. There is another trie based implementation which is a bit more efficient. Like not efficient, like you can say that, okay, you can code it that way as well. Okay. So let me quickly post this as well. So understand this code once, how this works. So maybe let me just give this in the chat itself. Yep. So this is one way in which you can implement this particular problem, right? Given a numbers, find the pair which has maximum sort. So the it's not about the implementation that I'm talking about in this particular problem. The main thing that you should learn from this problem is when you are solving a problem where you have to take max or min of numbers, it's generally better to process from the highest bit to the lowest bit. And when you are doing so, it's better to perform greedy operations. Like you should greedily make it one rather than like doing zero here and like optimally doing ones later on. Okay, it's never optimal that way. Okay, so this is the main key learning that you should learn from this particular problem. Okay. Implementation will come. We will come to this particular problem again in a different scenario, like with a different implementation idea as well, to test tries. But I hope this makes sense, right? Is everybody clear with this, like the logic of this particular problem? Like the idea of going from the highest bit to the lowest bit. So basically when we are going from the highest one, so if you have 7 and 3 and like this is 0, so this has like in the highest one, this has 1 0 1 1 0 1 1 1 0 1 1 0 0 0 0 0 1. So it's better to like use pair 7 with 3 and 7 with 1 rather than like pairing anything else, right, in this particular scenario, because that will give me 1 over here, and then whatever I do, even if it's 0, no problem. Okay. So what I will do is I will try with 7 3 and 7 1. I will not try 3 and 1 itself. So there I do a lot of pruning. Okay, that's the whole idea of this. So shall we discuss one more problem, or we can also end the session? One more. Let's discuss one more solving idea, or you're already too much bored. Pick anyone. Okay. So we will solve. So this will not be related to bit manipulation. We will discuss one very simple problem solving idea that comes up in questions on different platforms. So let's say there are variables like x1 plus x2 plus x3 plus so on up to xn, which is equal to some given constant c. Okay. And then I have to, and these are all like positive numbers given to you. Okay. And I have to maximize x1 square plus x2 square plus x3 square so on up to xn square. I have to maximize this term, provided that each of the xi's should be less than equal to some given d and should be greater than equal to 0. Okay, so you are given that let's take this less than equal to, okay, it should be less than equal to d, the sum should be less than equal to c, each of the individual variables should be less than equal to d, and this sum has to be maximized. So how can we do this particular? Any ideas? So let's forget about this one. Let's forget about this one. Let's forget about this. What is the answer in this case? Just like x's can be like from 0 to any number, like it can be 0 to infinity, and you have to maximize the sum of squares. Then how do you like distribute the values to, like there is c values to be distributed between n variables, and then you take square and like take max. So how do you make this sum maximum? Anyone? Any ideas? Any random ideas that might be coming up in the mind? Like I can, so like let's suppose pair of sum of pairs minimum. Okay, so let's suppose I have c equal to 6 and I have like, let's say x1 plus x2 equal to equal distribution cyn. Okay, I have x1 plus x2 equal to, let's say 6. Okay, like this c is 6 less than equal to 6. Okay. I have to maximize x1 square plus x2 square. Okay, so like tell me, is 3,3 better or 4,2 better? Shashi says 3,3. Okay, 3,3. Okay, let's evaluate them. So 3,3 is like 9 plus 9, 18. 4,2 is 16 plus 4, that is 20, right? Yep, so this is better, right? So in fact, now tell me which is better. What is the best? In fact, 1,5 is even better, right? Or even better, it's 0,6, right? So 0,6 is the best you can do, and 0,6 is the best. So now how can we like, so what is the answer for this particular problem now? Like what is the maximum you can make? C square, right? Yeah. So this is the like some like a quick trick that I wanted to discuss today as well. That okay, let's say when you are given a sum as constant and you have to like maximize the squares. So the idea should be greedily push each of them to its maximum value, and then when it gets full, then fill the next one. Then when it gets full, fill the next one. In this way, it is most optimal. When you have to like make it minimum, okay, make it minimum, this square x1 square plus x2 square. What would be the strategy in that case? Yeah, exactly. Divide equally. Make all of them equal, because in that case, that is the best you can do, right? Divide equally. Yeah. So try to make it c by n in each. Like this would be the, try to make it this in each, but there will be some extras, right? So fill up equally in one of them. So there would be exactly, so if I write in terms of expression, this would be something like there would be c by n value for each of them. And like if I multiply it with n and subtract it by c, so these many terms will have extra terms. So this, so there would be like c by n floor plus 1 in, let's call this temp. These many variables will have extra, so this is like an extra, right? This is like c mod n, how many leftover are there if we divide equally. So those many columns will have one extra, and rest of the things will have c by n, right? So this will be the answer in that case. Make sense? So this is like the one observation that was coupled with one of the problems that we discussed today in a Codeforces D like problem, contest D question, that you had to like first of all recognize A and B plus A or B is equal to A plus B, and then it was actually squared. So when you have to maximize sum of squares, you have to like divide. It's better to distribute greedily in one of the bits, like in one of them. Okay. So if you want, I can give you the link to the Codeforces problem as well if you want to practice that after this. That's also okay, which uses this property and one of the properties that we discussed today. Okay. But no worries, there will be similar problems on the platform as well. So I think we will add the questions by today itself, and then you can solve the questions on bit manipulations as well. So complete like next session would be on like sorting condition and some more ideas of STL. But before that, make sure you complete the prefix sum and bit manipulation questions. Okay. You can also complete the divide and conquer. That's quite independent, because after divide and conquer from next week onwards, we will start with binary search and 2 pointers, other techniques like that. So make sure like whatever C++ learning and things are there. Yeah, problems on bits are not there on the site. Yeah, we will upload this. I will upload this after this session for sure. Okay, so I will upload the video as well as the problems for this. Okay. So I think that's all for today's session.